The moment the Galactic Council announced sanctions on Earth, the air in the massive chamber thickened with tension, voices reverberating off the cold, metallic walls like a cacophony of distant storms. Representative Vitharn of the Zaelith Empire, his crimson skin glistening under the harsh artificial sunlamp, stood with an air of authority that spoke of countless conquests and worlds brought to heel. Earth must be taught its place, Vitharn declared, his voice resonating with unyielding finality. In the shadows of the chamber, unnoticed and underestimated, Captain Mira Kincaid watched the proceedings through narrowed eyes. She knew the rogue planet, drifting perilously close to the sun, was more than a mere celestial oddity. It was home to the Brotherhood of Sol, a cult that worshipped the blazing star and believed themselves its chosen protectors. The Council's decision would serve as a rallying cry for them, a call to arms hidden beneath layers of cosmic dust and forgotten solar winds. As the Council members voted, a holographic display flickered to life, projecting Earth's image, blue, fragile, defiant, into the center of the room. Mira clenched her fists, feeling the grit of dirt under her nails, remnants of the scrappy life that Earth's inhabitants had always known. She could almost hear the voices of her comrades back home, echoing across the void, defiant in the face of adversity. "They underestimate us," she murmured under her breath, her words swallowed by the electric hum of alien technology. Her mind raced, formulating plans and contingencies, calculating the potential for resistance against the Council's decree. Suddenly, an alarm blared, cutting through the Council's deliberations like a blade. The chamber plunged into chaos, lights flickering as the rogue planet's gravitational anomalies spiked unexpectedly. Screams of panic and confusion erupted among the delegates, but Mira remained still, her gaze fixed on the trembling hologram of Earth. "They're coming for us," she whispered, a fierce determination lighting her eyes. "And we'll be ready." The rogue planet, obscured by the sun's brilliance, shifted in its cosmic dance, its orbit a dangerous, unpredictable force. Within its shadowy depths, the Brotherhood of Sol prepared, their chants rising like a storm soon to break upon an unsuspecting universe. Mira knew this was only the beginning. The Council's arrogance would be their undoing. The chamber shook violently, and Mira braced herself against the wall. Her mind, sharper than ever, envisioned the path before her, the battles to be fought, the alliances to be forged. The stakes had never been higher, and the universe was about to learn a truth written in fire and fury. Earth would not bow. Not now, not ever. As the Council struggled to regain control, Mira slipped away, a ghost among giants, her mission clear. The rogue planet loomed closer, its mysteries unraveling, and with it, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The Brotherhood's chants grew louder, a promise of retribution whispered on solar winds. The universe had underestimated humanity once, but it would not do so again. The air inside the derelict freighter was thick with tension, the kind that clung to the skin like an oily residue. The emergency lights flickered fitfully, struggling against the omnipresent darkness that seemed to swallow even the smallest glimmer of hope. It was here, in this metallic crypt, that the members of the Children of the Ascending Star had found their sanctuary, or perhaps their prison. Alex Mercer, once a reluctant member of this spacefaring cult, now found himself leading the ragtag survivors. It hadn't been his choice. Fate had a cruel sense of humor that way. With their leader gone, his followers scattered like leaves in a solar wind, he had stepped into the void of leadership. Not out of desire, but necessity. "Alex, we can't stay here much longer," said Lena, her voice barely a whisper over the hiss of escaping oxygen from a ruptured panel. She was a diminutive figure, but one who carried the weight of the group's welfare on her shoulders, her eyes scanning the interior with a practiced, wary gaze. "I know," Alex replied, his voice a gravelly echo in the dim light. He ran a hand through his hair, feeling the grit and sweat that had become as much a part of him as his own skin. "But we don't have a lot of options. The reactor's down, and our communications are shot. It's not just that. I'm worried about what's out there." Lena's eyes flicked toward the viewport, where the inky void of space pressed against the glass like a stalking predator. As if summoned by her fears, the freighter shuddered, a low groan reverberating through its aged hull. The sound was a grim reminder of the danger lurking beyond their tenuous refuge. The star they orbited, once a beacon of life, now pulsed erratically, a dying heart threatening to drag them into its final death throes. "Do you think they're still following us?" Lena asked, her voice barely audible over the creaking metal. Alex hesitated, his mind replaying images of the pursuit. The cult's splinter faction, a radical group calling themselves the Heralds of the Singularity, had taken a malevolent interest in their defection. They were zealots, obsessed with hastening the star's collapse to transcend the mortal coil. And they possessed an arsenal capable of making their twisted visions reality. They won't stop until they have what they want, he said, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. But they'll have to go through us first. Lena nodded, her resolve hardening. Then we need to get the reactor back online. It's our only chance. Alex turned, eyes sweeping over the huddled forms of the group, their faces shadowed and weary. Among them, a wiry man named Tarek fiddled with a makeshift transmitter, its wires a tangled mess in his hands. He was a former engineer, his skills invaluable in their dire straits. "Hey, Tarek," Alex called out, motioning him over. "Any luck with communications?" Tarek looked up, his expression a blend of concentration and frustration. "I've jury-rigged a workaround, but it's not pretty. The transmitter's shot, and I'm not sure how much range we'll get. Just do what you can. We need to reach the nearest colony or a passing freighter, anyone who can help." "Understood," Tarek said, returning to his task with renewed vigor. As Tarek worked, Lena and Alex made their way toward the freighter's engineering section, navigating corridors that seemed to pulse with the ship's labored breaths. The metal walls were stained with the grime of years, a testament to the vessel's long and tumultuous history. They paused as they reached the reactor room, the door's rusted frame creaking ominously. Inside, the reactor sat like a dormant beast, its once vibrant core now cold and inert. Lena knelt beside the control panel, her fingers dancing over the keys as she attempted to coax the machine back to life. "Come on," she murmured, her voice a mix of coaxing and command. Alex stood guard, eyes flicking warily to the shadows that pooled in the corners. He could feel the weight of their plight pressing down, a physical force that threatened to crush his spirits. But he couldn't afford to falter. "Not now." "Got it," Lena exclaimed, her voice cutting through the oppressive silence. The reactor hummed, a faint glimmer of energy pulsating through the freighter's veins. "Nice work, Lena," Alex said, a rare smile breaking through his grim exterior. "Now let's get this ship moving." Lena nodded, her determination mirrored in the set of her jaw. "We'll head for the nearest colony. It's a long shot, but it's better than waiting to be picked off by the Heralds." They made their way back to the bridge, where Tarek was waiting, his makeshift communicator crackling with static. "I've got something," he said, holding the device up like a sacred relic. "It's faint, but it's a signal. Patch it through," Alex instructed, leaning in to catch the faint transmission. The voice that crackled through the speaker was garbled, distorted by distance and interference, but recognizable. "Sanger ship, this is Colony 3, respond." Alex's heart leapt at the prospect of salvation, but caution tempered his hope. "This is Alex Mercer on the freighter Ascendant's Mercy. We're stranded and need assistance. Do you copy?" Silence stretched taut, each second an eternity. Then, a reply. "Copy, Ascendant's Mercy. We're dispatching aid, but there's activity in your sector. Unidentified vessels, Heralds." Lena breathed, her eyes meeting Alex's with a mix of fear and defiance. "Understood," Alex said into the communicator. "We'll hold out as long as we can." Ascendant's Mercy out. The reality of their situation settled over them like a shroud. The Heralds were close, and time was running out. They had to act, and quickly. "We need to prepare for their arrival," Alex said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. "Tarek, get everyone ready. Lena, arm whatever defenses we have left." As the group sprang into motion, Alex felt the weight of their survival rest on his shoulders. He wasn't a leader by choice, but in this moment, he had no other option. They had to survive, if only to defy the fanaticism that sought to consume them. The freighter's sensors, ancient and unreliable, began to wail with the proximity alert, their shrill tones a herald of impending doom. Alex watched as the shadows of the Herald's ships loomed large against the void, sleek and predatory. "Brace for impact," he shouted, gripping the console as the first volley struck. The freighter bucked under the assault, metal shrieking in protest as explosions flared across its hull. The lights flickered, threatening to plunge them back into darkness. "Return fire," Lena yelled, her fingers flying over the weapon's controls, coaxing the aging systems to life. The freighter's guns spat defiance into the void, a desperate gesture against the overwhelming odds. Alex could feel the tension in the air, each breath a struggle against the fear that clawed at his resolve. A sudden explosion rocked the vessel, sending Alex sprawling to the deck. Pain flared along his side, but he forced himself to his feet, his vision swimming. Around him, the crew scrambled to maintain control, their faces set in grim determination. "We've lost shields," Tarek shouted over the din, his hands a blur as he rerouted power from auxiliary systems. "We can't take much more of this." Alex knew they were running out of time. The heralds were relentless, their zealotry driving them to press the attack with unyielding ferocity. And yet, beneath their fanaticism, Alex sensed a flicker of desperation. They wanted something vital. "What do they want from us?" Lena asked, echoing his thoughts. "Maybe it's not us," Alex replied, a sudden clarity cutting through the chaos. "It's the freighter, its reactor core, it's unique. Built to harvest energy from a dying star." Lena's eyes widened in understanding. "They want to use it to trigger the star's collapse." A cold fury ignited within Alex, burning away the remnants of doubt. He wouldn't let the heralds succeed. Not while he still drew breath. "Lena, can we overload the core?" he asked, formulating a plan that teetered on the edge of madness. "It's risky," she replied, her voice betraying a flicker of fear. "But it might just work." "Do it," Alex commanded, his resolve unyielding. As Lena and Tarek worked feverishly, Alex turned to face the viewport, watching as the herald's ships closed in for the kill. His mind raced, calculating their dwindling chances as the freighter's systems stuttered and failed. The core's hum grew to a roar, a crescendo building toward the inevitable. Lena's voice was tight with urgency. "We're ready, Alex. On your mark, now," Alex shouted, his voice carrying above the chaos. The freighter's reactor surged, flooding the ship with a blinding light. The herald's ships paused, caught off guard by the unexpected maneuver. Alex's heart pounded, a desperate hope mingling with the fear. "Detonate," he ordered, his eyes locked on the enemy. The explosion tore through the void, a nova of searing energy that engulfed the herald's ships. Alex felt the shockwave roll through the freighter, the force threatening to tear them apart. But as the light faded, he saw the herald's ships, crippled and burning. "We did it," Lena breathed, disbelief mingling with relief. Alex nodded, his body trembling with exhaustion. But the danger wasn't over. The star still threatened to consume them, an implacable force that defied their defiance. "We need to get moving," Alex said, rallying the crew with the last of his strength. "Get us out of here, now." As the freighter limped away, leaving the wreckage of the heralds in their wake, Alex allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had survived, against all odds. But the memory of the herald's fervor lingered, a reminder that their struggle was far from over. The stars were vast and unforgiving, and humanity's place among them was not yet assured. As the freighter sailed into the unknown, Alex knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was a harsh and uncaring place, but for now, they had carved out a fragile victory. One they would have to fight to keep. The air inside the cramped confines of the ship was stale, the recycled oxygen tinged with a metallic tang that clung to the back of the throat like a warning. Captain Mira Santos sat in the dim glow of the command console, her fingers dancing across the controls with an expertise that belied the chaos storming through her mind. The Council's sanctions had come down like a gavel from the heavens, a judgment passed on all of humanity for their refusal to acquiesce to the ever-tightening grip of the interstellar coalition. "Mira, the Council's cutting all trade routes to Earth," said Eli, her second in command, his voice a low rumble of tension. His eyes, usually so steady, were shadowed with doubt. "Every contract we've got with the mining colonies is null. They're squeezing us out." Myra's jaw clenched. "I know," she replied, her voice a tight coil of frustration. "But we need to focus. There's got to be a way to slip through their net." Eli exhaled sharply, the sound somewhere between a sigh and a growl. "The coalition's got every major port locked down. It's a miracle we even made it this far without being impounded." The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, the view outside shifting from the dizzying blur of faster-than-light travel to the stark expanse of the void. Mira stared out at the endless tapestry of stars, feeling the weight of the universe pressing against her. The coalition's fleet hung in orbit like a wall of steel teeth, each ship a sentinel of their dominion. Somewhere, hidden within that mass of military might, was the Council's flagship, an impregnable fortress of diplomacy and deterrence. "We can't fight them," Mira confessed, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Not yet," Eli replied, his tone firm. Though they were outmatched, he refused to let despair take root. "But we've got a cargo hold full of supplies, and there are still plenty of folks out there willing to trade on the sly. We just need to find them." Mira nodded, her resolve hardening. "We'll head to the outer fringes. The black market's always got a place for folks like us, and maybe we can find some allies out there." As they set their course for the edges of known space, Myra's thoughts drifted to her wife, Lena, back on Earth. The distance between them felt like a chasm, made wider by the Coalition's sanctions. She imagined Lena tending to their small garden, her hands working the soil with the same care and tenderness she brought to every aspect of their life together. It was a fragile piece, now threatened by forces beyond their control. The ship's hum was a constant companion, its vibrations seeping into Myra's bones as she navigated the fringes of Coalition-controlled space. The outlaw ports were a law unto themselves, where traders and smugglers rubbed shoulders with pirates and mercenaries. It was a place where the scent of desperation mingled with ambition, and even a single misstep could spell disaster. Their first stop was a station known as the Cradle, a ramshackle collection of modules and cargo holds that clung together in defiance of both physics and the Coalition's jurisdiction. The corridors were a riot of color and sound, a living testament to the myriad species that called the station home. Mira and Eli moved through the throng with purpose, their eyes scanning faces and stalls for familiar signs. It was in a dimly lit corner of the market that they found her, Zara, a shrewd trader with a reputation for discretion and a knack for finding what others could not. Her stall was an alchemist's dream, filled with rare minerals and contraband technologies. She looked up as they approached, her eyes narrowing in recognition. "Captain Santos," Zara greeted, her voice smooth as silk. "Didn't expect to see you this far out. Word is the Coalition's got your number." Mira forced a smile. "Zara, you know me better than that. I'm just looking for a little help." Zara leaned back, crossing her arms with a knowing smile. "Help comes at a price. Especially with the Coalition breathing down your neck." Eli shifted, his eyes scanning the crowd. "We're not looking for charity. Just a fair trade." Zara considered them, her gaze flickering between the two. "I've heard whispers," she said finally, "of a group out on the fringes. They don't much care for the Coalition either. If you can find them, you might just find what you need." Mira nodded, her heart a tight knot of hope and fear. "And where do we start looking?" Zara gestured to a star map pinned to the wall, her finger tracing a path to a system on its periphery. "Try the Garin Belt. There's been talk of activity out there. But be careful, it's not just Coalition patrols you need to worry about." With Zara's cryptic directions, they left the Cradle behind, the ship slipping once more into the void. As they traveled deeper into the fringes, the stars themselves seemed to shift and change, the familiar constellations of known space giving way to alien skies. Here, far from the Coalition's grasp, the rules were different, and survival demanded both cunning and courage. Days passed in a blur of tension as they navigated the Garin Belt, their sensors scanning for any sign of life amidst the asteroid fields and swirling debris. It was a desolate place, yet there was a beauty to the chaos, an artistry in the dance of celestial bodies that defied the Coalition's order and control. It was Eli who spotted them first, a flicker of movement against the endless black. A fleet of ships, ragtag yet unmistakably purposeful, moving with the precision of a pack. Mira hailed them, her voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at her insides. "This is the freighter Solstice, requesting permission to approach," she transmitted, holding her breath as the silence stretched. Finally, a voice crackled through the comms, rough with static yet unmistakably human. "Solstice, state your business." Mira exchanged a glance with Eli before replying. "We're looking for allies. The Coalition's got us pinned, and we need a way out." There was a pause, during which Mira could almost feel the weight of scrutiny from the other side. Then, to her relief, the voice returned, this time with a note of wary interest. "Follow our lead, Solstice. Welcome to the rebellion." Hope flared in Myra's chest as they were escorted towards a massive asteroid, its surface pockmarked with hangars and docking bays. This was the heart of the resistance, an alliance of those who refused to bow to the Coalition's might. As they docked, Eli let out a low whistle. "We're in it now, Mira. No turning back." Mira nodded, a fierce determination lighting her eyes. "Then let's make it count." Inside, the base was a hive of activity, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers carved into the rock. Mira and Eli were met by a group of humans and aliens alike, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. At their head was a woman with sharp features and an air of authority that commanded respect. "Captain Santos," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Commander Rhea. Welcome to the rebellion." Mira shook her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. "Thank you, Commander. We're here to help, and to find some help of our own." Rhea nodded, her expression softening slightly. "We could use all the help we can get. The Coalition's got a stranglehold on the core systems, but out here, we still have a fighting chance." As they walked through the base, Rhea explained the rebellion's struggles, a patchwork alliance of outcasts and dissidents, united by a shared defiance against the Coalition's tyranny. They were resourceful, but their numbers were few, and the Coalition's reach extended even to these fringes. "We've been hitting their supply lines, trying to disrupt their operations," Rhea said, her voice a quiet storm of determination. "But every time we score a win, they retaliate tenfold." Mira listened, her mind racing with possibilities. The rebellion was outmatched, their resources stretched thin, but they had something the Coalition lacked: a spirit that refused to be broken. It was a spirit she recognized in herself and her crew, a fire that burned brighter with each new challenge. In the days that followed, Mira and Eli immersed themselves in the rebellion's efforts, lending their skills and knowledge to the fight. They learned the intricacies of guerrilla warfare, using the terrain of the Garan Belt to their advantage. In turn, they shared their own experiences, teaching the rebels how to evade Coalition patrols and exploit their weaknesses. The camaraderie that developed was a balm against the grim reality of their situation. In the quiet moments between missions, Mira found solace in the stories of her fellow rebels, tales of loss and resilience, of families torn apart and dreams dashed by the Coalition's iron fist. Each story echoed her own, a reminder of the stakes they faced and the bond they shared. Yet even as their efforts bore fruit, Mira knew the Coalition would not remain idle. The sanctions were just the beginning, a prelude to something far greater. Whispers of a new fleet massing on the borders reached their ears, a harbinger of the storm to come. It was during one such mission, a raid on a Coalition convoy, that Myra's worst fears were realized. The operation was flawless, their team moving with the precision of a well-oiled machine. They struck fast and hard, disabling the convoy's escorts and securing the precious cargo of supplies. But as they made their escape, the Coalition's trap was sprung. An armada of warships emerged from the shadows, their weapons bristling with lethal intent. The rebels were caught in a deadly crossfire, their ships battered by the Coalition's relentless assault. Panic clawed at Myra's mind as she struggled to keep the solstice intact, her hands flying over the controls in a desperate bid for survival. Around her, the screams of her comrades filled the comms, a symphony of chaos and despair. "Eli, get us out of here," Mira shouted, her heart pounding in her chest. Eli's voice crackled with urgency. "I'm trying, Mira. They're on us like a swarm." The solstice shuddered under the impact of enemy fire, its hull groaning in protest. Warning lights flashed across the console, a cacophony of alarms that signaled impending doom. In that moment, Mira felt the weight of her choices bearing down on her. She had led them here, into the jaws of the beast, and now the lives of her crew hung in the balance. Desperation clawed at her, a visceral need to protect those she had come to care for. But even as hope seemed to slip through her fingers, a voice cut through the chaos, a calm, steady presence amidst the storm. "Captain Santos, hold your course," Ray's voice commanded, her tone a lifeline in the darkness. "We've got reinforcements inbound. Just hold on." Myra's grip tightened on the controls, a fierce determination flooding her veins. They were not alone. The rebellion was more than just a collection of ships and soldiers. It was a family, bound by a shared purpose. With renewed resolve, Mira guided the solstice through the fray, her movements guided by instinct and trust. And as the Coalition's armada closed in, the promised reinforcements arrived, a fleet of rebel ships surging into the battle with a ferocity born of defiance. Together, they turned the tide, driving the Coalition back and securing their hard-won victory. It was a battle that would be sung of in the annals of the rebellion, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to fight for their freedom. As the dust settled and the survivors regrouped, Mira stood on the bridge of the solstice, her heart a tumult of emotions. They had won a victory, but the cost was high, and the road ahead remained fraught with peril. Yet in the eyes of her crew, she saw a glimmer of hope, a belief in the impossible, and a determination to see it through. For in the vastness of space, amidst the cold and the dark, they had found something worth fighting for. And it was a fight they would not abandon, no matter the odds. The narrow corridors of the derelict freighter groaned under the strain of the artificial atmosphere, the sound echoing like the wails of lost souls. The dim red emergency lights painted everything in a sinister hue, casting long shadows that danced ominously as the crew of the Liberty's last stand crept through the vessel, senses strung taut as wires. Their mission was simple but perilous. Retrieve the stolen data core from the cultists' clutches and escape before the ship's ancient systems finally gave out. Captain Alara Mason led the way, her eyes scanning the shadows with the practiced vigilance of a veteran spacer. Behind her, the rest of her ragtag crew followed, each step a testament to their resolve and desperation. The freighter was a labyrinth of passageways choked with debris and the stale stench of neglect, an oppressive reminder of the countless vessels that had met their end in the depths of space. "Keep moving," Alara whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hiss of leaking air. "We're sitting ducks if we linger." Beside her, Miko, their engineer and de facto tech wizard, muttered as she adjusted the makeshift scanner cobbled together from spare parts. Signals still bouncing all over the place. These cultists really scrambled the ship's systems. "They must know we're here by now," said Jackson, their weapons specialist, his grip tightening on his pulse rifle. "We're up against a whole ship of them. We've got to be ready for anything." The cultists, members of the enigmatic Void's Embrace, had seized the ship as a sanctuary from their relentless pursuit by galactic authorities. They thrived in chaos, drawing power from their belief in the great silence that awaited all life beyond the stars. The data core they had stolen contained sensitive information that could shift the balance of power in their favor. Alara and her crew couldn't let that happen. "Movement," Miko hissed, pointing down a side corridor where shadows flickered just out of sight. Alara signaled for silence, and they pressed themselves into the walls, hearts pounding. The cultists emerged, a procession clad in tattered robes, their eyes glazed with fanaticism. They carried makeshift weapons, the gleam of madness in their eyes. "Steady," Alara breathed, feeling the adrenaline course through her veins. The cultists passed without incident, their murmured chants fading into the distance. Alara exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The narrow escape only deepened the sense of urgency. "Let's move," she urged, leading the way deeper into the bowels of the ship. The path was fraught with danger. The freighter's systems, long since abandoned by reason, were a patchwork of flickering lights and malfunctioning machinery. At one point, a section of the corridor collapsed behind them, a cacophony of metal and sparks that set their nerves ablaze. They barely managed to scramble forward, the debris sealing off their retreat. "No going back now," Jackson growled, his voice grim. Their journey brought them to the ship's central hub, a cavernous space once teeming with life, now a graveyard of shattered consoles and flickering monitors. In its center stood the altar-like dais where the cultists had installed the data core, surrounded by a tangle of cables and flickering holo displays. "There it is," Miko whispered, eyes wide with a mix of awe and dread. The room was empty, but the sense of being watched was palpable. Alara felt the weight of unseen eyes upon them, the oppressive silence almost suffocating. They moved quickly, Miko setting to work on the core while the others stood guard. "Almost got it," Miko muttered, fingers flying over the console. Suddenly, alarms blared, a cacophony of sound and light. The cultists had triggered a security lockdown, and the room's exits were sealed with a metallic clang. The air grew thick with tension as the echoes of the alarm faded into an eerie stillness. "They're onto us," Alara shouted, heart racing. "We need to get out of here, now." From the shadows, the cultists emerged, their eyes alight with zealotry. They filled the room, blocking every escape route, their presence oppressive. "Surrender," intoned their leader, a gaunt figure whose voice was as cold and empty as the void. "Embrace the silence." Jackson raised his weapon, defiance burning in his gaze. "Not today." The room erupted into chaos. Pulse rifle fire crackled, casting harsh shadows that danced with the flickering lights. The cultists surged forward, their numbers overwhelming. Alara fought with everything she had, the desperation fueling her every move. Amidst the chaos, Miko continued to work, fingers moving with frenetic energy. Almost. There, she shouted, triumph in her voice as the data core disengaged with a hiss. We've got it, Alara yelled, rallying the crew. Fall back to the secondary exit. The tide of battle shifted as they pushed through the throng, determination etched into every line of their faces. But as they neared the exit, their path was blocked by a massive blast door slammed shut as part of the lockdown. We're trapped, Jackson spat, frustration mingling with the sweat on his brow. Alara's mind raced, assessing their options. The freighter's systems were ancient, but that could be their advantage. Miko, can you hack this thing? Miko nodded, already moving to the nearest console. I'll give it my best shot. As Miko worked, Alara and Jackson held the line, every moment a struggle against the relentless cultists. The air was thick with the acrid tang of overheating circuits and the coppery scent of blood. The minutes dragged on, each one an eternity. The cultists pressed their advantage, their numbers seeming endless. Alara felt exhaustion creeping in, the fight taking its toll. Got it, Miko shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon. The blast door creaked open, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft leading into the depths of the ship. Without hesitation, Alara urged the crew forward, firing a final volley to cover their retreat. They stumbled into the shaft, sealing the door behind them. The silence was sudden and oppressive, the only sound their ragged breaths echoing in the confined space. They were safe, for the moment. Alara leaned against the wall, catching her breath. We need a new plan. They know we're here, and they won't stop until they have us. We can't keep running, Jackson said, his voice a low growl. We need to hit them where it hurts. Miko nodded, determination etched into her features. The freighter's core is unstable. We could use it to our advantage. Alara considered the idea, the flicker of hope igniting within her. If we can overload the core, we might be able to disable the ship long enough for us to escape. It was a risky plan, but their options were limited. The cultists wouldn't relent, and time was against them. We'll need to reach the engine room, Miko said, pulling up a map on her handheld device. It's a maze down there, but if we move fast. Their resolve hardened. They set off into the ship's bowels, navigating the treacherous underbelly of the freighter. The air grew thick with heat as they neared the core, the ship's systems groaning under the strain. As they reached the engine room, the cultists were ready, a wall of bodies blocking their path. The fight was brutal, every moment a struggle for survival. But amidst the chaos, Alara saw something in her crew, a spark of ingenuity, a refusal to give in. Jackson, ever resourceful, rigged a makeshift explosive from scavenged components, buying them precious seconds to reach the core. Miko worked with frenetic energy, her fingers a blur as she bypassed the ship's failing systems. But the cultists were relentless, their fanaticism driving them forward. Alara felt the weight of her crew's lives pressing upon her, the responsibility a palpable weight on her shoulders. With a final surge, they reached the core, Miko's hands dancing over the controls. Almost. There. She gasped, her voice strained. The cultists closed in, their presence an oppressive tide. Alara fought with everything she had, the desperation driving her beyond exhaustion. Got it, Miko shouted, triumph in her voice as the core began to overload. The ship shuddered, the lights flickering with an ominous intensity. Alarms blared, a cacophony of sound echoing through the ship's corridors. We need to move, Alara shouted, her voice barely carrying over the din. They fought their way back through the chaos, the ship groaning under the strain of the imminent overload. The path was fraught with danger, every step a battle against the cultists who sought to drag them into the void. As they neared the hangar, hope flared within them. But as they reached the final stretch, the path was blocked by the cult leader, his eyes burning with fanaticism. You will not escape, he intoned, his voice as cold as the void. Embrace the silence. Alara felt the weight of the moment, the lives of her crew hanging in the balance. But beneath the fatigue and the fear, she felt something else, a flicker of what made humans special, an indomitable spirit that refused to be crushed. In that moment, Alara knew they would not surrender. They would fight, adapt, and overcome. The cult leader's words were empty against the fire within them. With a final defiant surge, they broke through, the path to the hangar clear. They stumbled aboard the Liberty's last stand, the ship's engines roaring to life. As they sped away from the dying freighter, Alara watched as it was consumed by the void, a testament to their resilience and adaptability. They had faced their darkest moment and emerged stronger for it. But even as relief washed over them, Alara knew the fight was far from over. The cultists would not give up, and the galaxy was a vast and dangerous place. For now, they had won a temporary reprieve. But the shadows of the void were ever present, and the battle for survival continued. As the Liberty's last stand streaked into the stars, Alara allowed herself a moment of hope. They were human, after all, and in the face of the endless void, that meant everything. The stale air of the Everlaster was thick with the burnt tang of circuitry, the remnants of a recent battle that left the ship crippled and adrift. The dim emergency lights flickered sporadically, casting jagged shadows that danced across the debris-strewn corridors. What had once been a proud vessel, a symbol of human defiance against the galaxy's oppressive cults, now lay gutted, a tomb of twisted steel and shattered dreams. Captain Eileen Moss clutched the railing tightly, her knuckles white from strain, as she surveyed the bridge. The few crew members who remained able were huddled around the gutted console banks, their tired eyes reflecting the dull glow of malfunctioning holographic displays. Each of them bore the scars of their recent skirmish, cuts, bruises, and the hollow look of souls pushed to the brink. "Status," Moss rasped, her voice barely cutting through the crackling of dying systems. "Still no comms, Captain," Lieutenant Arlo responded, wiping a streak of blood from his brow. "Navigation's fried, we're bleeding power from every deck, and life support's on its last legs." Moss nodded grimly. They were floating dead in the void, easy prey for the Purity Sect's warships lurking nearby, waiting to pick over the bones of their conquest. The sect had pursued them relentlessly across the stars, driven by a fanatical zeal to cleanse the universe of those who defied their doctrine. Every encounter had cost Moss and her crew dearly, and now, with the Everlaster crippled, their plight seemed insurmountable. But surrender was a word that had long since ceased to exist in their lexicon. "We're not done yet," Moss declared, a fire igniting behind her eyes. "We've faced worse odds before." Arlo exchanged a weary glance with the others, a flicker of hope rekindling in their expressions. The captain's resolve was infectious. It had carried them through countless trials, and it would do so again. "There's gotta be something we can use," Moss continued, her mind racing through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. "We need power, comms, and a way out of this sector before the sect picks our bones clean." "Ideas?" The crew hesitated, the weight of their dire situation pressing down on them. It was Ensign Mela who spoke first, her voice tentative yet determined. "The auxiliary reactors in engineering. They're offline, but if we can reroute power from other systems, we might be able to jump-start them." "Good," Moss nodded, considering the plan. "What about comms?" "There's an old emergency beacon in storage," Arlo suggested. "It's archaic, but if we can get it working, it might broadcast a distress signal." "Do it," Moss ordered. "And see if there's anything in the armory we can use to reinforce the hull. We can't afford to take another hit." As the crew scattered to their tasks, Moss lingered on the bridge, her gaze drawn to the viewport. Beyond the cracked glass, the stars shone cold and indifferent, witnesses to the struggle unfolding in their midst. She thought of Earth, of the sprawling cities and verdant fields she had left behind. She thought of the people, their indomitable spirit, their refusal to bow to tyranny, and it steeled her resolve. The sound of hurried footsteps broke her reverie as Chief Engineer Darnell appeared, a bundle of tangled wires and tools cradled in his arms. "Captain," he greeted, breathless but with a spark of determination in his eyes. "We've got a shot at those reactors, but it'll be a close thing." "What's the risk?" "Everything," Darnell admitted. "If we push too hard, we could blow ourselves apart. But if we don't," he left the thought unfinished. Moss nodded, accepting the gamble. "Get it done, Chief. We don't have any other choice." In the bowels of the ship, a hive of activity erupted as crew members worked feverishly to breathe life back into the Everlaster. Sparks flew as Darnell and his team dismantled panels, jury-rigging connections and bypassing damaged conduits. The air hummed with the tension of their efforts, the ship's collective heartbeat racing against the countdown to doom. Meanwhile, Arlo and Mela wrestled with the outdated emergency beacon. The device was a relic, a holdover from another era when humanity first ventured into the stars. Its mechanisms were stubborn and unyielding, but as they worked, coaxing it back to life, the faint flicker of hope began to take root. On the bridge, Moss monitored their progress, her mind a whirlwind of calculations and contingencies. She knew the Purity sect would not wait forever. Already, their scouts prowled the perimeter, shadows flitting through the void, eager for the kill. The intercom crackled to life, Darnell's voice echoing through the ship. "We're ready, Captain. Starting the reactor sequence now." Moss held her breath, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her chest. The seconds stretched into eternity, each one a silent plea to the universe for reprieve. Then, with a shuddering groan, the Everlaster came alive. Lights flickered on, systems hummed with renewed vigor, and the air was charged with the electric promise of salvation. Cheers erupted throughout the ship, a jubilant cry of defiance against the darkness. "Great work, everyone," Moss said, her voice thick with emotion. "Arlo, Mela, how's that beacon?" "Almost there, Captain," Arlo replied, his fingers flying across the controls. "Just a few more adjustments." "Make it fast," Moss urged, her gaze flicking nervously to the sensors. The sect's ships were drawing closer, their predatory intent unmistakable. As the crew raced against time, Moss formulated the next step of their plan. With the auxiliary reactors online, they had regained some control over navigation, but their path was fraught with peril. To escape the sector, they would need to navigate a treacherous asteroid field, a natural barrier that might just hold the key to their salvation. "All hands, this is the captain," Moss announced over the intercom, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Prepare for emergency maneuvers. We're going to punch through the asteroid field and lose them in the rocks." "Hold on tight." The ship groaned as Darnell coaxed every ounce of power from the jury-rigged systems. The engines roared to life, propelling the Everlaster forward, a wounded beast clawing its way through the void. As they approached the asteroid field, Moss felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the thrill of defying the odds. The debris loomed large, a labyrinth of tumbling rock and ice, but it was their only chance. "Mela, Arlo, get ready to launch that beacon," Moss instructed. "We need to create a diversion, something to draw their attention." "Aye, Captain," Mela replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. With a final adjustment, the beacon pulsed to life, broadcasting a distress signal into the ether. It was a small hope, a desperate plea for aid, but even the smallest spark could ignite a flame. The Purity sect's ships, sensing their prey's attempt to flee, surged forward, weapons primed. But as the beacon's signal cut through the void, confusion rippled through their ranks. Was it a trap? Another ship, hidden among the rocks? Their hesitation was all the Everlaster needed. "Punch it," Moss commanded, and the ship leapt forward, plunging into the asteroid field. The crew braced as the Everlaster weaved between the tumbling rocks, its hull groaning under the strain. Moss gripped the controls, her focus unyielding, every nerve attuned to the delicate dance of survival. Behind them, the sect's ships hesitated, their formation disrupted by the unexpected maneuver. But their pursuit was relentless, driven by the zeal of their cause. As they closed in, the Everlaster's path became a gauntlet of near misses and daring maneuvers. "Brace for impact," Darnell warned as a massive asteroid loomed ahead, its surface pocked with craters. Moss twisted the controls, sending the ship into a death-defying spin that carried them clear by the narrowest of margins. The crew's cheers were short-lived as the sect's lead ship, a sleek predator bristling with weaponry, closed the gap. But in their haste, they underestimated the human spirit, a mistake that would cost them dearly. As the Everlaster careened through the field, a plan crystallized in Moss's mind. Desperation fueled her ingenuity, and she knew that if they couldn't outrun their pursuers, they could outthink them. "Arlo, how are the weapons looking?" Moss asked, her voice edged with urgency. "Minimal power, but we've got a few surprise packages left," Arlo answered, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Good. Prepare to deploy them. We're going to give them something to remember us by." The ship's weapons system sputtered to life, guided by Arlo's skilled hands. They only had one shot, a single chance to turn the tide. As they neared a cluster of asteroids, Moss executed a sharp turn, bringing the Everlaster's stern in line with their pursuers. Now, Moss ordered, and Arlo unleashed the payload. Explosive charges rocketed toward the asteroids, their detonation a symphony of chaos that sent debris hurtling through the void. The sect's ships, caught in the maelstrom, veered wildly, their formations shattered. The Everlaster surged forward, engines blazing as they broke free of the field, the sect temporarily left reeling in their wake. Moss allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. They had bought themselves precious time, but their escape was far from assured. "Status report," Moss called, her mind already calculating the next move. "We've lost them for now," Darnell said, relief tinged with exhaustion. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We need to find a haven to make repairs." "Agreed," Moss said, scanning the star map for options. There was one possibility: an abandoned mining colony on the fringes of the sector, long since forgotten. It was a gamble, but it offered shelter and resources they desperately needed. "Set course for the colony," Moss ordered, "and keep an eye on long-range sensors. The sect won't stay confused for long." As the Everlaster limped through space, Moss allowed herself a moment to reflect. They had defied the odds once more, their determination a beacon against the encroaching darkness. But she knew the true challenge lay ahead. In the cold silence of the void, the seeds of resurgence had been sown. The human spirit, unyielding and defiant, would rise again, and with it, a reckoning that would shake the stars. The Everlaster continued its journey, a testament to humanity's resilience, navigating toward the breaking point where everything would change. The spacecraft's hull groaned as it navigated through the dense asteroid belt, like an ancient beast shaking off the dust of centuries. Inside, the dimly lit corridors were alive with the murmur of voices, punctuated by the occasional bark of laughter. The crew of the Asterisk Odyssey moved with purpose, each member a cog in the intricate machine of humanity's last hope. Captain Alara Quinn stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that painted the space around them in shades of blue and green. She was a statuesque figure, her features sharp and commanding, with hair that seemed to shimmer like the void itself. Her reputation as both a strategist and a maverick had made her a legend among the fleet, a status she wore with a mixture of pride and unease. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," said Lieutenant Mason, his voice steady but laced with tension. The young officer's fingers danced over the control panel as if coaxing music from an instrument. Alara nodded, her gaze never wavering from the display. "Prepare for deceleration. Let's not give them any reason to suspect we're more than just another rock in the belt." As the ship slowed, the crew braced for the subtle lurch that came with it. The Odyssey was a marvel of human engineering, a testament to their ingenuity in the face of extinction. It was a patchwork vessel, cobbled together from parts scavenged across the galaxy, yet it held together with a resilience that mirrored its crew. Below decks, in the heart of the ship, engineers worked tirelessly amidst the whirring of machinery and the pungent aroma of oil and sweat. Jimmy O'Shea, the chief engineer, was a hulking figure whose gruff exterior belied a mind capable of coaxing miracles from metal. He moved among his team with the grace of a dancer, issuing commands with the precision of a maestro. Prepping the reactor for the jump, Jimmy called out, his voice cutting through the clamor like a blade. "We're gonna need every ounce of power this old girl can muster." The crew responded with a chorus of acknowledgments, their movements synchronized, almost ritualistic. This was the heart of humanity's defiance, a place where failure was not an option. In the crew quarters, whispers of uncertainty mingled with the sharp tang of recycled air. They were soldiers, scientists, engineers, and dreamers, bound together by a common cause. The cult of the Celestial Divine, a fanatical alien sect that had spread through the galaxy like a virus, sought to cleanse the universe of what they deemed impure. Humanity, with its stubborn refusal to bow and its penchant for chaos, was at the top of their list. Alara's voice echoed through the intercom, a steady anchor in the storm. "All hands, prepare for contact. We are not alone. Remember your training and trust in each other. Humanity stands on the precipice, and it is up to us to pull it back." The bridge crew tensed, eyes flicking to their captain as a new signal blared across the console. A ship, sleek and predatory, emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid. It was a celestial warship, its hull a seamless blend of organic and mechanical, as if it had grown rather than been built. "Captain, they're hailing us," Mason reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Alara nodded, a feral smile playing across her lips. On screen, the holographic display flickered, resolving into the image of a celestial high priest. The alien's features were almost ethereal, eyes like burning stars set in a face of alabaster. It regarded Alara with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Humans, the high priest's voice was a silken thread, weaving through the air. You persist in your defiance, clinging to life like vermin. Why not embrace the inevitable and join us in ascension? Alara met the alien's gaze with unwavering resolve. We may be vermin, but we are tenacious. And you, priest, have underestimated us. The high priest chuckled, a sound like breaking glass. We have seen your kind before. Every time, you crumble under the weight of your own hubris. Then perhaps you haven't seen us at our best, Alara replied, her voice a calm storm. Prepare to witness what it means to be human. With a subtle gesture, she signaled Mason, who keyed in the command. The ship's lights dimmed as the reactor roared to life, a primal force bottled within the Odyssey's hull. The crew braced as a surge of power coursed through the vessel, propelling it forward with a speed and agility that defied its patchwork appearance. The celestial warship hesitated, its commanders taken aback by the unexpected maneuver. It was a momentary lapse, but in combat, moments were the currency of victory. Jimmy, now's your time, Alara ordered, her voice a knife's edge. In engineering, Jimmy and his team sprang into action, fingers dancing over controls as they executed a carefully orchestrated plan. The Odyssey shuddered as its systems pushed beyond their limits, a controlled chaos that only humans could master. The warship fired, beams of energy slicing through the void. But the Asterisk Odyssey danced between them, a wraith in the darkness, its movements erratic yet precise. The crew worked in tandem, a symphony of skill and instinct honed by years of survival. Alara watched as the odds shifted, the realization dawning in the High Priest's eyes. The humans were not the prey they had expected, but rather hunters of a different kind, ones who fought with the desperation of those who had nothing left to lose. Prepare the surprise, Alara commanded, a glint of mischief in her eyes. The crew responded with grins, knowing what was to come. The Odyssey had one more trick up its sleeve, a testament to human ingenuity and defiance. As the warship closed in, Jimmy activated the modified mining lasers, their beams converging on a single point within the celestial vessel's defenses. It was a gamble, one that hinged on the element of surprise and the precision of human hands. The hull of the warship buckled, a flare of light marking the breach. The alien vessel shuddered, its systems faltering as the humans took the offensive. On the bridge, the High Priest's eyes widened in disbelief, their arrogance replaced with a dawning respect for the tenacity of their adversaries. The humans had adapted, turned their weaknesses into strengths, and struck back with a ferocity that defied the script the Celestials had written for them. "Captain, they're retreating," Mason announced, his voice filled with a mix of triumph and disbelief. Alara allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before issuing her next orders. "Pursue them. Let them know that humanity will not go quietly into the night. We will not be erased." The crew responded with a cheer, their spirits buoyed by the victory. They had faced the darkness and emerged, not unscathed, but unbroken. The war was far from over, but this battle had tilted the scales, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. As the Odyssey surged forward, a new sense of purpose infused the crew. They were more than just survivors, they were architects of their own destiny, warriors in a war for the soul of the galaxy. In the aftermath, as the ship settled into its new course, Alara stood alone on the bridge, her eyes on the stars. The Celestials had underestimated them, but she knew the fight was far from over. Humanity had shown its strength, its willingness to adapt and endure, but more challenges lay ahead. She turned to Mason, her expression one of determination. "Send a message to the fleet. Let them know what we've accomplished here today. And tell them to prepare. This is just the beginning." Mason nodded, his fingers already dancing across the console. "Aye, Captain. They'll hear us." As the message went out, carrying with it the hope and defiance of a beleaguered species, Alara felt a surge of pride. They had taken the first step on a long and perilous journey, but they would not walk it alone. Humanity had woken from its slumber, ready to face the dawn of a new era. The stars beckoned, and the Odyssey answered, a lone ship carrying the weight of an entire species' dreams. The Celestials had learned a harsh lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were survivors, creators, and fighters, and they would not rest until they had carved out a future amidst the stars. The battle had ended, but the war for humanity's survival had just begun. With each passing moment, with every beat of the ship's heart, the Odyssey reminded them all of what it meant to defy the darkness. And so, they pressed on, a beacon of hope in the void, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Humanity was more than just a footnote in the annals of time. It was a force to be reckoned with, a testament to the unyielding spirit of life itself. The air inside the derelict space station was as stale as the cult leader's promises. It clung to the skin, thick with the metallic tang of old fear and forgotten dreams. The flickering lights along the corridor cast long shadows, moving like ghostly fingers over the rusting walls. This was the heart of the cult, their last bastion of delusion, and in the center of it all stood Ezra, the man who promised salvation among the stars. Ezra, self-proclaimed prophet of the void, had watched as his grand vision unraveled. His followers, once a legion of the devout, were now reduced to a handful of desperate souls clinging to the wreckage of his dreams. They had been promised transcendence, an ascension to a higher plane through the divine machinery of the cosmos. Instead, they found themselves adrift, cut off from the very universe they sought to conquer. In the main chamber, a grotesque altar of twisted metal and circuitry pulsed with a sickly green light. It was their artifact, their holy relic, scavenged from an ancient derelict ship and worshipped as a conduit to the divine. Ezra had believed it would open a gateway, a celestial path that only the faithful could traverse. But now, it served only as a cruel reminder of their isolation. The airlock hissed as it cycled open, and the clatter of boots echoed down the corridor. The cultists, already on edge, turned their eyes to the entrance with a mix of fear and hope. Had the universe answered their call? Had some angelic force come to deliver them? Instead, it was humanity in its most raw, unadulterated form. A team of specialists, handpicked from the remnants of Earth's finest, entered the chamber with a purpose that seemed to draw the very breath from the room. Their leader, Captain Lena Torres, exuded an air of confidence that cut through the oppressive atmosphere like a knife. The cultists shrank back, eyes wide, as the humans advanced with military precision. Lena's gaze swept the room, taking in the artifact, the cultists, and finally, Ezra himself. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a resolute determination that left Ezra feeling small and exposed. "What you've done here," Lena said, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to press down on the room, "is a violation of the cosmos. You've twisted technology and faith into something monstrous." Ezra attempted to muster the fire of his convictions, to rally his followers with words of salvation. "You don't understand. We are on the brink of ascension. The artifact is a bomb," interrupted Dr. Marcus Cade, the team's chief engineer. His words were flat, devoid of any doubt. "A relic of war from an era long forgotten. It's a miracle it hasn't detonated already." Ezra's heart skipped. He had believed so fully, so utterly in the artifact's power. The realization that his holy relic was nothing more than an ancient weapon twisted his stomach into knots. His followers murmured, their faith teetering on the edge of collapse. Lena stepped forward, her eyes locked onto Ezra's. "You brought these people here with promises of the divine, and you led them into a death trap." Ezra's voice faltered. I didn't know." The air seemed to vibrate with tension, the artifact's eerie glow casting shadows across faces strained with fear and disbelief. Behind Lena, her team moved into action. Dr. Cade was already at the artifact, his hands moving with practiced precision over its surface, assessing the damage and possibility of disarmament. As the moments ticked by, the cultists watched with bated breath. Lena's team worked seamlessly, a testament to human adaptability and resilience. They communicated in clipped, efficient tones, their movements a dance of technical prowess and understanding. Ezra could feel the desperation seeping from his followers, the trust they had placed in him crumbling like dust. He had led them to this precipice, and now it seemed only these interlopers, these humans, could save them. The silence was broken by the sudden, sharp crackle of comms coming to life. "Captain," Dr. Cade's voice was tense, "the artifact is more unstable than I anticipated. I'll need time to neutralize it." Lena nodded, her expression unwavering. "Do what you have to do, Marcus. We'll cover you." The cultists shifted uneasily, huddling together as Lena's team formed a protective perimeter. Ezra watched, a feeling of helplessness creeping over him. He had been so certain, so convinced of his path, and now he was faced with the undeniable truth of his folly. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as Dr. Cade worked. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his hands moving with a surgeon's precision over the artifact's intricate components. The team's medic, a wiry woman named Samira, monitored the cultists, her eyes sharp and assessing. Ezra's heart pounded in his chest. He had to do something, say something. "Please," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "save them." Lena's gaze flicked to him, and in that moment, he saw the depth of her resolve. "That's what we're here for." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Ezra could not ignore. It was as if the universe itself had sent these humans, not as angels or saviors, but as a reminder of humanity's enduring spirit. Minutes passed, the tension in the room a palpable force. Dr. Cade's focus was absolute, his fingers dancing over the artifact's surface with a familiarity born of countless hours spent unraveling the mysteries of ancient technology. Finally, with a decisive click, the artifact's glow dimmed, its ominous hum silencing into nothingness. The relief that swept through the room was tangible, a collective exhalation of breath held too long. "It's done," Dr. Cade announced, stepping back from the now inert artifact. "It's safe." The cultists sagged in relief, their fear giving way to exhaustion. Ezra felt a strange mix of emotions, gratitude and shame intertwining in his chest. He had led them to the brink, but it was these humans who had pulled them back. Lena turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "We'll get you back to Earth. You'll answer for what you've done, but your people will be safe." Ezra nodded, his voice hoarse. "Thank you." With the immediate threat neutralized, Lena's team began the process of securing the cultists and preparing for their return journey. The efficiency with which they moved was a testament to their training, a reminder of the heights humanity could reach when driven by purpose and resolve. As they worked, Ezra watched them with a mixture of awe and humility. He had spent so long chasing the stars, searching for divinity among the void, that he had overlooked the miracles present in the human spirit. These people, with their unwavering determination and unyielding courage, had shown him the truth he had been blind to. In the end, it was not the artifact or the promises of a false prophet that would lead them to salvation, but the indomitable will of humanity itself. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was one that Ezra accepted. As they prepared to leave the station, Ezra glanced back at the chamber, at the relic that had once held his dreams. It stood silent now, a relic of a past that had no place in the future. He turned away, following Lena and her team, ready to face the consequences of his actions. The journey back to Earth was a quiet one, the weight of what had transpired settling over them like a shroud. The cultists, once fervent in their faith, now seemed lost, adrift in a universe that no longer held the promises they had believed in. Lena and her team remained vigilant, their presence a reassuring constant in the uncertainty of the void. As they approached Earth, the blue-green marble hanging in the vastness of space, Ezra felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, in the end, there was still a chance for redemption. When they arrived, the cultists were taken into custody, their fate to be determined by those with the authority to judge. Lena's team stood by, a silent testament to the triumph of human ingenuity and perseverance. Ezra watched them from a distance, his heart heavy with the weight of his failures. But within that weight was a spark, a realization that even in the darkest moments, there was light to be found. He approached Lena, a man humbled and broken, yet seeking something more. "I was wrong," he said, the words falling from his lips like stones. "About everything." Lena regarded him with a steady gaze. "We all make mistakes. It's what you do after that matters." Ezra nodded, the truth of her words sinking in. He had a long road ahead, but for the first time, he saw a path forward, guided not by false promises, but by the enduring strength of humanity. As he turned to face the future, Ezra knew that he would carry the lessons of this experience with him. In the end, it was humanity, flawed and magnificent, that had saved them. And for that, he was grateful. The aftermath of the battle was a tapestry woven from equal parts triumph and devastation. The cultists' fortress, once a daunting citadel of dark faith, now lay in ruins under the crimson sky of Sigma-9. Its spires, once piercing the heavens with their blasphemous audacity, had crumbled into twisted wreckage, remnants of a shattered ideology. Smoke lingered like a shroud, mingling with the stench of scorched metal and burnt ozone. Captain Elena Voss stood amidst the debris, surveying the aftermath with a grim satisfaction that belied the chaos of her surroundings. The coalition forces had emerged victorious, and with that victory came a sobering realization: humanity had not just survived, it had asserted its place amongst the stars with an indomitable spirit. She turned to see Dr. Marcus Hale, the scientist whose intelligence had deciphered the cult's cryptic technologies. His face was a portrait of exhaustion and relief, but his eyes held a spark that went beyond the weariness. "We did it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but resonant with the weight of what they had achieved. "Yes," Elena replied, her gaze drifting across the field where survivors were being tended to by medics and volunteers. "But at a cost." Marcus nodded, understanding the unspoken grief that lingered between them. The cost was not just in lives lost but in the innocence and naivety that had been shed along the way. The cult had promised transcendence through subjugation, a future where humanity's soul was the price of progress. But humanity, flawed, stubborn, and resilient, had refused to surrender. Nearby, Sergeant Liu, a veteran soldier whose calm had been a beacon throughout the conflict, was directing the evacuation of wounded personnel. His precision and discipline had been crucial in the heat of battle, and now it served to restore order amidst chaos. He caught Elena's eye and gave a nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared burdens and victories. The cult's leader, the enigmatic and fanatical savior, had been captured, their rhetoric silenced but their influence still echoing through those who had followed blindly. The savior was being held in a makeshift cell, a far cry from the throne of command they had once occupied. Elena made her way to the holding area, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Inside the cell, the savior sat, their eyes devoid of the divine fire that had once captivated so many. "You think you've won," they rasped, each word a ghost of the fervor that had once fueled their sermons. "But this is just the beginning." Elena met their gaze steadily. "No, this is the end of your reign of terror. Humanity will not bow to your false gods. Humanity," the savior sneered, "is nothing but a fleeting spark in the cosmos." "We are a spark," Elena agreed, her voice firm, but one that can ignite change. "We've proven that today." As she left the cell, Elena felt a strange sense of closure. The savior's defeat was symbolic of more than just military victory, it was a triumph of human will over the chains of dogma. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged not just alive, but stronger, with new resolve. In the weeks that followed, the coalition began the arduous task of rebuilding. The fortress was dismantled, its resources repurposed for the reconstruction of habitable colonies. The survivors of the cult, freed from their mental shackles, were offered a choice, a chance to integrate, to be a part of a future where humanity thrived not through domination, but through unity. Amidst the rebuilding, Dr. Hale's work took on a new dimension. The technology that had once been used to enslave was now being adapted for healing and advancement. The bioorganic interfaces, re-engineered with a new purpose, were revolutionizing medical treatments and communications. Sergeant Liu continued to serve, his stoic presence a constant reminder of the sacrifices made and the vigilance required to maintain peace. He found solace in mentoring new recruits, instilling in them the values that had guided him: honor, resilience, and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. The victory at SIGMA 9 resonated far beyond the battlefield. Across the coalition worlds, the story of humanity's triumph spread like wildfire. It became a beacon of hope for those who had lived under the shadow of the cult, a testament to the power of defiance and the strength found in unity. Elena Voss, now a celebrated leader, found herself at the heart of this new era. She had become a symbol of humanity's potential, a living embodiment of what could be achieved when people came together against the odds. Her story, and the stories of those who had fought beside her, became part of the collective memory, inspiring a generation to look beyond the stars with hope instead of fear. As the sun set on yet another day of rebuilding, Elena stood on a ridge overlooking the transformed landscape. The ruins of the cult's fortress had been cleared away, replaced by fields and communities that flourished in the light of newfound freedom. Humanity had not just survived, it had adapted, learned, and grown. She felt a presence beside her and turned to see Marcus. "What now?" he asked, a hint of curiosity and anticipation in his voice. "We keep pushing forward," Elena replied, her eyes fixed on the horizon that held untold possibilities. We've proven what we're capable of. It's time to take that strength and carve out a future worthy of it." Marcus nodded, a smile breaking through the fatigue. "Together, always," Elena affirmed, her heart swelling with pride for the people she had fought beside and the world they were building. And so, the story of humanity on SIGMA-9 became a part of the cosmic tapestry, a chapter of resilience and triumph that would echo through the annals of time. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged not just victorious, but united, having redefined what it meant to be human in an unforgiving universe. In the grand, grimy expanse of the cosmos, amidst stars that had witnessed both creation and destruction, humanity's light now shone a little brighter, a testament to the enduring spirit that refused to be extinguished. The universe watched, and humanity, in its raw and imperfect glory, continued its journey, forever changed yet fundamentally the same, undeterred, undaunted, and unyielding.